Hey friends. So yesterday I spent quite a bit of time thinking about reading the story of David from the Bible, specifically David and Goliath. In church yesterday, our pastor taught on David as a risk taker of the Bible because David went into a battle that it seemed highly unlikely he would win, and he still won using the skills that God gave him. And with my teens yesterday at church, I should say teens and preteens, yesterday afternoon, we talked about how David was young and he was a very unlikely hero because of his age, but how God used him anyway, despite him being so young. So for those of you who may not be as familiar with the story of David and Goliath, David was a shepherd boy. He was the youngest of 7 sons. So they put him at about 12 to 14 years old. And one day, David's dad asked him to go to the battlefield where 3 of his oldest brothers were and take some bread to them. So David goes out to the field or to the battlefield, and he hears somebody mocking the armies of Israel and mocking God. And it was this giant 9.5 foot tall warrior mocking God. David's like, what are we doing about this? We're just going to let this guy mock God? Or just going to let him make fun of our God? And everybody was too scared to go out onto the field of battle. So David's like, all right, I'll do it. I'm going to go defeat him. Everybody's like, you can't defeat him. You're too young. He's been training to be a warrior since he was a kid. There's no way you can defeat him. And David's like, hey, when a bear or a lion comes to steal one of my dad's sheep, like I go after it and I just whack it over the head and I take my sheep back. I'm not afraid of this guy. That was one of the things our pastor talked about, is David could take risks because he had taken risks before. And so the king is like, all right, if you really feel like you need to go into this battle, let me put my armor on you. So I want to read this part of the scripture to you. And if you're looking for the story of David and Goliath, it is in 1 Samuel 17. So I am going to be reading you just a few verses starting at verse 38. It says, "Then Saul clothed David with his armor. He put a helmet of bronze on his head and clothed him with a coat of mail. And David strapped his sword over his armor, and he tried in vain to go, for he had not tested them. Then David said to Saul, I cannot go with these, for I have not tested them. So David took them off. Then he took his staff in his hand and chose 5 smooth stones from the brook and put them in his shepherd's pouch. His sling was in his hand, and he approached the Philistine." And there's something really significant that happens there that I think we all need to take note of, but I think it's often overlooked. King Saul wanted David to be safe going into the battle. And so King Saul took his own armor and put it onto David. So imagine a full-grown king putting his armor and giving his sword to a 12 to 14-year-old boy. It's not going to fit, is it? And David knew that. David knew going into the battle, this doesn't fit. This is not the right plan for me. This is not going to be a successful plan for me. But the plan God has for me is going to be successful because it's one I was designed for, and the plan was designed for me. But how many times do we do that? We try to step into a plan or a destiny that wasn't made for us because maybe we saw somebody else in that destiny or somebody else on that action plan, and it looked really safe or it looked really desirable, but it wasn't designed for us. Far too often we look around and we play the comparison game and we see, oh, they have something I don't have. Oh, they have something that I want, something that I need. Because by all rights, David needed armor to go into the battle. By all manly thought processes, he needed armor to go into the battle. And it would have been very easy for him to choose to wear armor that didn't fit him just so he could feel safer. But he knew he was not going to be safer stepping into armor, into a battle that didn't fit him. But he knew his shepherd staff, though it looked like no big deal. I mean, Goliath even said to David when he walked into battle, "What am I, a dog? All you're coming at me with is a stick?" It was unassuming. It wasn't compared to a sword who's going to pick a stick to go into battle. But David knew that that was the weapon that not only was he comfortable with, but it was designed for him. And he put these five little stones in his pouch, and he took his slingshot because, again, that's the weapon that he was training in, that he was practicing with. And it was a weapon that was designed for him. So as you think about this story, like I said, I was spending most of yesterday on this story. As you think about it, what areas of your life are you playing that comparison game? Where are you trying to step into a purpose or a destiny that was designed for someone else and ignoring what God has laid before you?